Hi guys, this is gsnom.com and I'm here with a review of the Sony Xperia 10 Mark II, the mid-range phone that Sony launched earlier this year, and it stands out because of the glass build at the back, IP68 certification, and also the OLED screen. The price is $350, which is rather big for a mid-range phone with a pretty dated CPU, but at least we have a triple camera here, as you can see. Okay, so a narrow phone for sure. It's also 8.2mm thick and weighs 151 grams. IP68 certified, also IP65, which means it's dust and water resistant, which is always good news. It's a narrow handset for sure. It's prone to portrait usage and to long sessions of, well, scrolling around in your Facebook feed and in your browser. It's got glass at the front, glass at the back, which is a nice touch, and quite big bezels at the top and the bottom side. I have to say it's pretty comfy to use. In portrait it's got an okay grip, but it may feel weird to people when it's being held like this in landscape mode. I don't have a problem with it. Some people with bigger hands may find it uncomfortable. It's got a plastic frame as far as I gather, and its finishing may make it feel a bit slippery, but its narrowness saves it from that. A pretty solid build, and I would say also very light. That was my first impression and I sustain it. Okay, so on the screen front, we're dealing here with a handset that provides you with a 6-inch OLED screen with a resolution of 2520 over 1080 pixels, Gorilla Glass 6 protection, and the viewing experience, well, we actually have a video for that. You can check it out here. Let's go full screen and properly enjoy it. Okay, so as you can see, the top and bottom bezels are quite big, for sure, but the side ones are, I would say, decent, not the slimmest in the world for sure. Now, we got vivid colors, we got deep blacks, wide view angles. Okay, and I was pretty satisfied with the brightness, and the contrast is rather okay. It's a satisfying experience for a mid-range phone for sure, and we appreciate that we have an OLED here. Now the pixel arrangement is of the pentile matrix variety, and going further, as usual, we have a brightness test which we published on our sister site, and you can see here that we achieved a level of 451 lux units. This means that we're doing good. We surpassed the Huawei P40 Lite 5G and the OnePlus Nord, which is not bad. At the same time, we scored below the predecessors, the Xperia XA1 and XA2, and also below the Motorola One Zoom, just so you know it. Now, we're done with the screen, and I would say we're pretty reasonably satisfied with it. It's time to go inside the phone and see what makes it click and tick. The CPU is familiar for a mid-range phone, Qualcomm Snapdragon 665, and we're dealing here with an octa-core chip at 2 GHz accompanied by 4 gigs of RAM, 128 GB of storage, as well as a microSD card slot, which is shared with the SIM slot and is accessible here. You don't need a metal key, you just pull this tab, the SIM tray is out, and it will reset the phone if you're planning on replacing the SIM. I have good news, there's no overheating, there's not much of a lag here, even though at the first boot up you may encounter some delays. But overall, I didn't feel like there was any sort of lag in general usage. Now, when it comes to benchmarks, we also did those, and things are, I would say, predictable. They're exactly like we expected. For example, in Antutu 8, this is how much we scored. I hope it's relevant to you. I should mention that we beat the Nokia 7.2 and the Motorola Moto G8 Power, also the Galaxy A41. We stayed below the Galaxy A51, Moto One Action, and also below the Redmi Note 8T from Xiaomi. This is Antutu 8, I'll say it again. When it comes to Geekbench 5 multi-core subtest, here we are. This is the score. As you can see, a smidge above Nokia 7.2 and Moto G8 Power once again, and at the same time below the Motorola One Zoom, Redmi Note 8T, and Motorola One Macro. I'm sensing a pattern here. In the graphical department, there's 3D Mark Slingshot Extreme ES 3.1 with this score, again above Moto G8 Power, Xiaomi Mi A3 and Redmi Note 8T below the Galaxy A41 and A31. Basically, you can already tell the pattern. It fits somewhere between the Moto G8 Power and around the Nokia 7.2, above it more often than not. In the long run, you may start to experience some lag in about a year or so, and the games obviously will not run at top level you can play PUBG, but the details will be modest and there may be some stutter if you really go higher with the details. The good news is that there's absolutely no problem with the temperature. It's one of the cooler phones out there. In benchmarks it was not even at 30 degrees, 28.8, and in games a mere 34 degrees Celsius, so definitely no overheating. Now on the battery front we were worried because nowadays most phones have 5000, 6000 mAh batteries. This one 3600 mAh lithium polymer with an 18 watt charging. And it delivered, rest assured. Let's see, battery. When it comes to video playback, things were huge. We almost caught the top 10, and I'm actually surprised we didn't. 19 hours and 57 minutes. So with this value, we managed to beat LG Velvet, the Xiaomi Mi 90 and OnePlus Nord. We scored below the Galaxy A31 and Galaxy A70 as well as the Cat S42. Still pretty impressive. When it comes to continuous usage, once again impressive, 15 hours and 45 minutes, above the Xiaomi Mi Note 10 and Xiaomi Mi A3 plus the Motorola One Macro. Still below the Moto G8 Power, which is a battery phone, but only by 8 minutes, which is a bit of a compliment. The biggest problem here is definitely, most definitely the charging, which is almost 4 hours, and this is crazy. I'm starting to think we have a faulty charger. It's impossible to deliver that in 2020. It's absolutely huge, and after 1 hour you're at just 16%. There's got to be something wrong here. I cannot explain it. It basically bumps down the whole experience of the battery, which is otherwise solid. Speaking of things which are bumped down, we have a singular speaker here, and I was tempted to show the bottom of the phone. Actually, it's not here. It's this slit here. I don't know if you can see it. This slit is for the speaker, and we also have an audio jack at the top. I'm going to say it from the start. The headphones which are bundled here are mediocre, and the experience, well, wasn't that impressive. So let me show you an acoustic sample fast. Okay, copyright free music, here we go. The audio library, trying to dodge any sort of problems, and this should be fine. Okay, so this is definitely not Sony's finest moment. Usually back in the day there were a landmark for acoustics. Actually, it's quite a bit of a disappointment. So I would have to say that the bass is disappointing. There's basically no bass. We have only one singular speaker. It's just bad. The voice is the only thing that's okay. The high notes are poor, the mid notes are poor, the bass is unsatisfying, the volume is just okay. Nothing managed to impress me, sadly. If you want tweaks, you can go to the music app, and even those are lacking here. The only settings you have are basically the DSEEHX, and that's about it. I'm underwhelmed by everything, maybe except from the way the voices are heard. Expected just a bit more. We also have some decibel meter tests in case you really want proof, and the power of the volume is shown here. It's 88.8 decibels when it comes to the test with a typical acoustic sample, so 88.8, which means that we're surpassing OnePlus Nord and Moto G8 Power. And when it comes to gaming, 90.6 decibels, usually we manage to achieve 100 decibels here, and it's a letdown. Now, we proceed to the camera department, and first of all, we don't have a cutout in the screen, we don't have a notch, we have an 8 megapixel selfie camera right here for your selfie needs. If you go to the back side, the package is triple. We have 3 cameras here and LED flash above them. We have the main 12 megapixel shooter with f2.0 aperture, 8 megapixel, main 12 megapixel camera, f2.0 aperture, secondary 8 megapixel telephoto 2x optical zoom camera, which is nice to have on a mid-range phone, and another 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera this time. This camera shoots in 4K video at 30 frames per second, and let's see what we achieved here. So first of all, every once in a while I notice that the phone has a tendency to take photos pretty slowly, and I do mean that they're actually quite slow. Okay, so when I say slowly, you're even going to have to wait 1 or even 2 seconds when taking the shot, which is bad. It's not a constant, doesn't happen all the time, only sometimes, but even that is not reassuring. Okay, so these shots were taken in a vacation, and there's not a lot of them, but they're pretty relevant. We're traveling through Romania, and this is it. So I would say that when it comes to the colors, they're pretty correctly calibrated, so that's nice. We also have some shots here where the sky and the nature are both caught in a pretty decent fashion. The ultra-wide shots aren't bad. They're a bit lacking details compared to the main camera and a bit wider. If you attempt at taking close-ups, you'll be let down for sure. And once again, if you're into landscapes of nature and if you're into accurate colors, this may be the phone for you. It can do that pretty well. So bad close-ups, but not that bad colors and landscapes. We took here a selfie with portrait mode. I would say it's okay, but nowadays an 8 megapixel camera doesn't cut it anymore. We need something better and something newer, and several more shots here, some of them pretty memorable. This was an area where the light was hiding behind the trees, creating some shade, and the camera was able to capture the moment in a pretty competent fashion. I would say this camera can fight the Motorola One series from 2019, maybe, just maybe, the Redmi Note 9, but I'm not very sure about that. Okay, so this was daytime. Let's go to the low light, where we actually have more shots, and for a mid-range phone things are pretty decent, decent being the key word. They're nothing out of the ordinary, and actually the street light halos are rather big. However, I'm happy that there was no deformation of the color. We didn't slip into pink or orange as some phones do, like the Galaxy A50 from last year did, for example. At the same time, once again, the street light sources are a bit weird if you really look at them closely, and obviously ultra-wide shots weren't that impressive. And here the camera could not face the power of this lit up symbol. I can see here that there's a recommendation to fix the lighting, so that's nice. The AI can help us. Okay, so not a memorable capture during the nighttime, just okay. In the video department, you're definitely going to want to stick to 4K. We have here some memorable shots. These are holiday shots. There was a bit of cloudiness, and as you can see, the change of exposure is done pretty well. Decent focus, but there's a bit of shakiness going on, so not the best stabilization in the world. It's actually very shaky, so there's that. Stick to 4K is my advice if you want proper colors, proper texture, and a decent amount of details. Okay, and we have one more video here in this idyllic scenery. Once again, I feel that it's on par or a bit superior to the Motorola One series from last year. I actually don't remember its predecessor, it's been a while, from the Xperia XA2, but I remember that I was pretty happy with its video capture, so there's that. Almost forgot about the low light capture. Obviously, is nothing to write home about. Usually mid-range phones do not deliver an impressive low light capture. It feels a bit green here. There's a hue of green, there's shakiness, so nothing to write home about. Okay, so I think we're done with a small mention of the fact that the microphone can really handle its own. It feels like a mediocre Galaxy A during the nighttime, that's about it. On the connectivity front, USB-C port at the bottom with a mic next to it, audio jack at the top, and other than that, a dual SIM experience, Wi-Fi dual band, there's Bluetooth 5.0, and we also have GPS, GLONASS, 4G LTE, NFC, and the calls were pretty loud and clear. Now, aside from calls, we also have speeds, and I'm talking about the whole speed test thingy, which we have here, which are a series of tests taken in Wi-Fi and 4G. Now, this is one of those Wi-Fi tests, and here we're with the 4G one. So on 4G we achieved 204 megapecsecond downloads and 66.7 megapecsecond uploads. I would say we're doing fine. And on Wi-Fi we achieved 265 megapecsecond downloads and 24.6 megapecsecond uploads, as you can see here, which are pretty high scores if you ask me, so I'm pretty happy with what the phone delivers in the connectivity department. When it comes to the OS, well, I'm not that happy. I mean, it looks fine, it's close to the stock experience, but it's very cramped on this screen. It's Android 10 with Xperia UI on top. The camera interface, I'm not happy with it for the past 2 years. It's a bit laggy, and these modes are weirdly arranged, I would say. This side sense feels useless to me. I'm supposed to maybe tap it or swipe it, still not sure what to do to trigger it. Here we are, a collection of shortcuts, and probably the most useful subsection of it is the fact that you can create a multi-window and split the screen into 2 apps, which, well, this is what it looks like. And you can also pre-use them like this and create a proper selection. You can see here, for example, Chrome and Maps are preset, so there's that. Okay, now aside from that aspect, I would say it again, we're pretty close to a stock experience. We got the news on the leftmost home screen. We got the widgets. Come on, let's trigger them properly. The widgets are definitely stock. We got the drop-down section with the notifications and quick settings. But everything feels cramped because of the fact that we have a very narrow screen. And aside from that, for the security's sake, we have the fingerprint scanner in the power button, which is pretty snappy. So that's a piece of good news. And the pre-installed apps, well, there's the PlayStation app, there's the music app, there's the Amazon shopping and a bunch of tools, but nothing truly special. Sony doesn't differentiate itself from other device makers, certainly not through useful stuff. You can also change navigation from the buttons to the swipes, and we also have some typical settings and also Xperia Assist and also digital well-being. Okay, so that's about it. Software-wise, cramped and dated. That's the interface, and now it's time for the verdict for the Xperia 10 Mark II. Okay, so as usual, in some parts of the ending of the review, we like to play some games, and this is just to show you how a game is able to fit on this quite elongated and narrow screen. Okay, so this is Riptide GP Renegade, which I'm not sure is even in the Play Store anymore. And now, as far as the pros and cons are concerned, I'm going to start with the pros. It's a wieldy phone, if you like narrower devices. It's got the IP68 certification, it's got the microSD card slot thingy, it's got the audio jack, doesn't suffer from visible lag in day-to-day use. Also, it's got an okay brightness of the screen and pretty nicely calibrated colors. Excellent battery life when it comes to video playback and also the continuous usage. The pictures look pretty okay, I would say, in general, for a mid-range phone. 4K video capture was satisfying and fast connectivity is a plus. Those are the pros. On the cons, no stereo speakers, poor singular speaker, long charging, actually huge charging, 4 hours is definitely a bummer. And aside from that, cramped user interface with nothing special, poor close-ups, shaky videos. The price is, I would say, $100 too high, or maybe $50 too high for what it's offering. And well, that's pretty much it. Okay, so it's a device which is definitely, most definitely built for video. I mean, video watching, as you saw before, definitely like this in landscape mode, maybe some gaming in the mid-range department and arcade, and definitely for scrolling purposes. So if you're scrolling in interfaces which are nowadays fit to longer aspect ratios, it's definitely the phone for you. For Instagram users, Facebook users, people who scroll their life away all day long. That's the core of the experience. Scrolling on Facebook, watching some videos, and taking a bunch of, I would say, solid pictures and 4K videos. That's about it. But aside from that, it doesn't stand out from the crowd with nothing special. Xperia used to mean quality speakers and also a quality display and also probably a more inspired design than what we're seeing here. And frankly speaking, for $350, I'm sure that you can get 2 solid mid-range phones from China, maybe even with 5G. So this is it from gsno.com. Reflect on it. We're about to get a follow-up for this one, maybe with the Xperia 5 Mark II. Bye bye.